Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come with shouting matches or slammed doors, but with silence. Cold, calculated silence that echoes louder than words ever could. Millionaire ignored his pregnant wife for weeks. She surprised him with divorce papers. A soft drizzle pattered against the sprawling glass windows of a luxurious estate just outside Marin County. Inside, a pregnant woman stood alone by the fireplace, her eyes tracing the dancing flames. Her heart heavy with confusion and betrayal. Weeks had passed since her millionaire husband last spoke to her, leaving her anxious and unsettled, trapped in a gilded cage of broken promises. She wondered if love had simply dissolved into thin air, or if his neglect was a sign of something far more sinister. What she never expected was that her next step, handing him divorce papers, would spark a chain of events no one could have foreseen. Jenna Caldwell had never been the type to chase after extravagance. Growing up in Boise, Idaho, she had a humble upbringing, something her father, Charles Benson, prided himself on. He worked in carpentry, often coming home smelling of sawdust and sweat, yet always bearing a warm smile for his family. Her mother, Lillian Benson, was an empathetic nurse at the local clinic, known for her gentle touch and listening ear. Jenna's childhood was filled with modest joys: volunteering at the community shelter, dancing barefoot in the backyard during summer, and picking cherries in the orchard every fall. That unassuming life changed dramatically when she met the tall, charismatic, and fabulously wealthy Alexander Caldwell, nicknamed Alex by his high society peers. Alexander was the heir to the Caldwell Group, an international conglomerate dabbling in real estate, biotech, and venture capital. While public tabloids swooned over his refined features and philanthropic work, those who knew him personally whispered about his steely ambition and relentless drive for success. Jenna first encountered Alexander in San Francisco at a charity gala hosted by the influential Margrave family. She was there to volunteer, never imagining she'd catch the eye of one of the wealthiest bachelors in the country. That night, Alexander mesmerized her with his stories of global ventures and investing in emerging innovators. More than his fortune, Jenna admired his wit and the way he carried himself with thoughtful composure. He seemed genuinely curious about her life in Idaho. A whirlwind courtship followed, extravagant dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, weekend getaways to Napa Valley, and then a lavish wedding at a historic cathedral in downtown San Francisco. Despite her parents' initial unease, they ultimately trusted that Alexander's devotion to Jenna was genuine. Yet as months turned into years, and the public glimpsed them only at high-profile events, cracks began to form in the fairy tale marriage. Jenna often felt isolated in Alexander's pristine marble mansion in Marin. She went from being a nurse's daughter in Boise to the wife of a mogul who often didn't come home until after midnight. His affections, once abundant, grew sporadic, and then distant. The staff, including a discreet housekeeper named Maria, tiptoed around Jenna, aware of her sadness. Despite the gilded artwork and plush rugs, the corridors often felt cold and empty. When Jenna discovered she was pregnant, she hoped it would rekindle the warmth she'd once found in Alexander. She imagined a future where their child might break the monotony of wealth and ambition, and perhaps spark a sense of family closeness that Alexander had missed in his own strict upbringing under Vivian Caldwell, a stern matriarch and Alexander's mother. But instead of joy, Alexander grew strangely silent. He refused to attend the first ultrasound appointment, citing a conference in Singapore. Weeks passed with minimal conversation, and Jenna found herself sobbing in the hush of her bedroom, cradling the tiny bump that was their baby. Each night she lay curled in bed, her hands protectively wrapped around her belly, whispering promises to the child growing inside her. Promises of love, of safety, of a different kind of family than the one she now found herself trapped in. The loneliness was suffocating, made crueler by the knowledge that while her body changed daily, the man who should have shared her excitement remained emotionally absent. The silence didn't just echo through the mansion. It followed her into sleep. She began to wake up in the middle of the night from vivid, unsettling dreams, visions of herself walking endless marble hallways, calling for Alexander, never finding him. Sometimes she dreamed she was in the delivery room alone, the baby crying and no one coming to help. Jenna stopped mentioning the dreams to anyone, not even Naomi, afraid they might sound like weakness. But inside, she was fraying. Now she stood in front of the enormous fireplace, gazing at the golden flames that flickered across the ivory walls. A storm brewed outside, mirroring the turmoil in her heart. Alexander had been away for nearly 2 weeks, neglecting not just her phone calls and messages, but even the basic decency of letting her know when he'd be back. Her mind brimmed with questions. Had he stopped loving her entirely? Was he hiding something more than just business obligations? Little did she know she was on the brink of discovering a labyrinth of secrets that would shatter the very foundation of her life with Alexander Caldwell. Late one evening, thunder rumbled in the distance, and headlights flashed across the circular driveway. As a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up in front of the mansion, Jenna watched from an upstairs window. She pressed her hand to her growing belly, feeling a swirl of dread and relief. At least, he was home. Down in the foyer, she found Alexander handing his coat to Maria. He looked tired, but there was an unfamiliar tension in the tightness of his jaw and the furrow of his brow. Jenna summoned her courage. "You're back," she whispered, the echo of the cavernous hall swallowing her words. Alexander barely met her eyes. "Long flights, back-to-back meetings," he said, voice clipped. "I need a shower and some rest." They faced each other, an invisible chasm between them. Jenna wanted to ask if he was okay, to press him about why he hadn't been returning her calls. Instead, she simply nodded and stood aside as he ascended the grand staircase. Night stretched on. Jenna lay awake in bed, but Alexander never joined her. By morning, she found him in the downstairs study, the door half shut. She could hear him speaking to someone on the phone, his voice strained. "I'm telling you, Langston, this is not the time. I need space. Can't you see that? I'll figure it out. Just leave me be for a while." Jenna tried to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. She thought about confronting him right then, demanding answers. But she hesitated. Since discovering she was pregnant, she wanted to keep her stress levels down, for the baby's sake. Still, each unanswered question gnawed at her, leaving invisible bruises on her confidence. She had never felt more distant from the man she once called home. Resentment mingled with concern as she walked away, the hush of the corridor magnifying every uncertain thought. Over the next few days, Alexander drifted in and out of the house like a ghost. He made numerous phone calls, each time leaving in a rush, sometimes in the middle of the night. He was always evasive when she tried to talk, replying with short, rehearsed lines. "Business never stops. I'm sorry, but I have urgent matters." Or simply, "Not now, Jenna." The staff exchanged worried glances behind closed doors. Maria at times found Jenna crying quietly in the library. The cook, an elderly woman named Dolores, started preparing light soups and calming teas, hoping to ease Jenna's tension. No one dared question Alexander directly. His reputation for being unyielding was legendary. One morning, as rain pelted the windows, Jenna grew fed up with the endless excuses. Gathering her courage, she confronted Alexander in the foyer, where he seemed to be hurriedly packing a small suitcase. "Alexander," she said firmly, "what's going on? I'm carrying your child. I deserve to know why you've been avoiding me, why you're leaving at all hours." He kept his gaze on his luggage. "I have crucial negotiations in Seattle," he said mechanically. "I told you. Business is complicated right now. You've been gone for 2 weeks already," she replied, her voice trembling with pent-up frustration. "You ignore my texts, my calls. Do you have any idea how that feels?" He looked up at her for the first time in days. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, guilt perhaps, or sorrow, but it vanished quickly. "You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under," he said, grabbing the handle of his suitcase. "We'll talk when I'm back." She watched him leave, the heavy mahogany door closing behind him like the final note of a dirge. In that silence, something broke inside her. The pain wasn't just in being neglected. It was the realization that she was disappearing from her own life. The man she had once built dreams with now barely looked her in the eye, and the child growing inside her felt more and more like hers alone to protect. Her lips trembled, but no tears came this time. All that was left was fire. In that moment, Jenna felt a surge of anger she'd never experienced before. She refused to be relegated to a bystander in her own marriage. If Alexander Caldwell wanted to lock himself away in a fortress of secrets, she would find a way to break it down. or walk away altogether. Determined to get to the bottom of her husband's cryptic behavior, Jenna contacted the one person she trusted outside the Caldwell empire. Her old friend from Boise, Naomi Astor. Naomi was a journalist who had moved to Los Angeles for a reporting job with the Pacific Tribune. Over the years, they had remained close, though their lives had diverged significantly. A few phone calls later, Naomi arrived at the Marin estate, her battered Subaru looking distinctly out of place among the luxury vehicles. Jenna greeted her at the door, pulling her friend into a tight embrace. "It's bad, Naomi," Jenna confessed, her voice quivering. The pair retreated to the privacy of a small sitting room near the back of the estate, far from the staff's prying eyes. Naomi took out a notebook. "All right," she said, her tone direct. She said in her direct journalist tone, "Tell me everything. From the top." Jenna recounted the months of Alexander's disappearing acts, the sudden phone calls, the rumored deals, and how his affection had withered, almost overnight. Naomi nodded, scribbling notes. "Have you considered that he might be seeing someone else?" Naomi asked gently. Jenna flinched. Though the thought had crossed her mind, she resisted giving it form. "I don't know," she replied softly. "He claims it's business, but I can't shake the feeling. There's more." Naomi frowned. "I can do some digging," she said, then paused before adding, "but you need to be prepared for whatever we might find." That same night, Naomi slipped away to Los Angeles. She reached out to her contacts, a private investigator named Rafael Costa, and a few colleagues who specialized in corporate oversight. They started combing through financial records, property deeds, and recent business acquisitions tied to Alexander Caldwell and the Caldwell Group. Within a week, Naomi had a trove of unsettling information. Bank statements hinted at massive unexplained withdrawals, strange wire transfers to shell companies with vague names, a discreet offshore account in the Cayman Islands. But most importantly, rumors of a hidden relationship with a woman named Camille Duval, a chic interior designer often seen at elite charity events and art galas. When Naomi hesitantly relayed this to Jenna, she saw her friend's face go pale. Jenna pressed a hand against her belly as though shielding her unborn child from the shock of betrayal. "I need proof," Jenna said, fighting back tears. "I won't accuse my husband of something like that, unless I know for sure." "Raphael's got photos," Naomi whispered. "They've been spotted at a penthouse Alexander's company bought in downtown San Francisco." Images soon arrived. Alexander stepping out of a luxurious apartment, Camille at his side. The two exchanging brief, intimate smiles. The timestamps showed Alexander's presence on nights he had claimed to be away on urgent business. Jenna stared at the photos, feeling numb. Anger, despair, heartbreak, all warred in her chest. But her thoughts shifted abruptly to her unborn child. She refused to let Alexander reduce her life to a tragedy. Gathering all the strength she could muster, she told Naomi, "I need to see a divorce attorney." Naomi nodded, her eyes filled with sadness. "We can start right away." Jenna's appointment with a high-profile San Francisco divorce attorney, Olivia Kwan, came 2 days later. Olivia's office exuded the polished elegance one would expect from a law firm catering to the wealthy. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Bay Area skyline, and the plush furniture contrasted jarringly with Jenna's emotional turbulence. Olivia listened intently as Jenna recounted the strange neglect, the potential affair, and the existence of hidden financial dealings. "I see," the attorney said at last, her voice calm and measured. "It's not uncommon, in marriages where there's a significant wealth disparity, for one spouse to become isolated. The secrecy around finances suggests he may be funneling assets to protect them. If you pursue legal action," Jenna swallowed hard, "I'm worried about my future and the future of my child." She said, her voice breaking, "Alexander has all the power here." Olivia leaned forward, hands clasped. "Legally, that's not necessarily true. As his wife, you have claims to marital assets. The key is documentation, every hidden account, every secret property. If it turns out he's diverting funds to cheat you out of your fair share, we can use legal channels to expose that. However, you need to be prepared for a bitter fight. Men like Alexander seldom give in easily." Though she was terrified, Jenna found a flicker of resolve in Olivia's words. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. She paused, tears threatening. "I wanted a family. I didn't want a war." She looked down at her hands, fingers trembling slightly. The word war tasted bitter on her tongue, a sharp contrast to the quiet dreams she once held, of laughter in the nursery, shared Sunday mornings, and tiny socks folded together in anticipation. Now, each vision felt like it belonged to another life. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. What if this was a mistake? What if she was destroying something that could still be repaired? She had grown up believing love meant endurance. What if this legal path meant their child would grow up visiting parents in separate homes, asking hard questions far too soon? But then she remembered the silence, the lies, the emptiness, and her uncertainty slowly turned to resolve. Olivia offered a sympathetic smile. I know. Divorce is never easy, especially under these circumstances. My team and I will help you navigate this. But you must brace yourself. Alexander may retaliate. He has vast resources and is well connected. Jenna left the law firm feeling both fortified and hollow, carrying a thick folder of documents she'd need to review, sign, and assemble for court proceedings if things escalated. On the drive back to Marin, her mind swirled with memories of her wedding day, Alexander slipping a ring on her finger, promising love and devotion. Now that ring felt like a shackle, tightening around her heart. Late the next evening, Alexander finally returned home unannounced. As usual, Jenna was in the library, poring over the legal documents with trembling hands. She heard Alexander's footsteps in the hallway and quickly tucked the papers under a large coffee table book about Renaissance art. Her heart pounded as he entered. "What are you doing here in the dark?" Alexander asked, flipping on a lamp. Jenna forced a calm tone. "Reading. Couldn't sleep." He looked as if he was about to say something but changed his mind. An uneasy silence followed, broken only by the rustling of the curtains in the draft. Jenna gathered her courage. "Alexander, I want to talk about us." He stared at her for a moment, then sank into an armchair, loosening his tie. "Fine," he said, sounding weary. "Let's talk." She swallowed, her gaze steady. "I'm worried about our marriage, about the baby. You're never around, and when you are, you barely look at me. What happened to us?" He ran a hand through his hair, sighing heavily. "I told you," he said. "Work is complicated, the economy is shifting, investors are restless, and I have obligations to my board, my family's legacy." Her temper flared. "You mean your affair with Camille Duval?" she demanded, voice shaking. Alexander's eyes went wide. He opened his mouth to respond but seemed at a loss for words. "I know about the penthouse," Jenna pressed. "I know you've been there, with her." Alexander shot to his feet, anger blazing on his face. "You've been spying on me?" Jenna glared at him, tears in her eyes. "I wouldn't have had to, if you'd been honest. You told me you cared about building our future, but you've been investing your time in someone else." She stopped, noticing that her shoulders were heaving, her chest tight with panic. Alexander looked momentarily stricken. Then he turned away, fists clenched. "It's not what you think," he muttered. Jenna laughed bitterly. "Really? You expect me to believe that? After weeks of silence, you're telling me I've got this wrong?" He whirled around, eyes flashing. "That penthouse is business-related. Camille is just an associate." "Don't insult me," Jenna cut in, her voice trembling with both fury and heartbreak. "You think I'm too naive or too stupid to see the truth? I have my own sources, Alexander. You've betrayed me, and you've betrayed our child." For a moment it looked like Alexander might break down. A swirl of conflicted emotions played across his features. But then, as though flicking a switch, he hardened. "Fine," he said, voice cold. "If that's what you need to believe, so be it." Jenna took a shuddering breath. "I'm not going to stay in this marriage if you treat me like some dispensable figurehead. I was your wife before I was your trophy. You have no idea what's really going on," he snapped, cutting her off. "If you push me on this, I'll—" He stopped himself, closing his eyes as if wrestling down an inner demon. Jenna's hands trembled at her sides. "You'll what? Try to ruin me? You think I can't survive without your money?" she said, her voice rising. "I have resources too, Alexander. You're not the only one who can fight dirty." He glowered at her, then turned and strode out of the library, leaving behind a vortex of tension. Tears slid down Jenna's cheeks. She felt as if she'd been talking to a stranger, a man who was a far cry from the charming Alexander she once knew. After a moment, she retrieved the hidden documents, her resolve doubling. If he wouldn't give her respect, she would take back her autonomy, even if it meant delivering an ultimatum in the form of divorce papers. In the days that followed, Jenna braced herself for the worst. Alexander moved to a guest room, an absurd arrangement, given that the estate had dozens of rooms he could choose from. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was curt and distant. She finally broke the news to her parents, Charles and Lillian Benson, over a tearful phone call. They offered their unconditional support. "Come home if you need to," Lillian pleaded. "We'll help you raise that baby with all the love in the world." Jenna thanked her mother, even as her heart ached. She knew returning to Boise would feel like an admission of defeat. In her mind, she wasn't ready for that. Yet she also feared that Alexander might leverage their child as a weapon. He had the means to hire the best attorneys, potentially complicating any custody arrangements. Still, she felt bolstered by her parents' love. Meanwhile, behind the gilded walls of the Caldwell dynasty, rumors began to swirl. Vivian Caldwell, Alexander's mother, was a formidable figure, rumored to control the family's empire from her estate in Carmel Highlands. She despised anything that threatened the family's pristine image, and a messy divorce certainly qualified. When she got wind of the trouble brewing in Marin, she ordered an urgent family meeting, summoning Alexander, Jenna, and a cadre of Caldwell lawyers to her retreat. The last thing Jenna wanted was to face Vivian's withering stare, but she agreed, hoping that maybe the Caldwell matriarch could talk some sense into her son, or at least confirm that Jenna had the right to step away from this toxic environment. As they boarded a private helicopter to Carmel, Alexander sitting coldly across from her, Jenna felt her stomach knot with dread. She tried to focus on the surging life within her, reminding herself that the baby's well-being came first. The helicopter's blades whirred overhead, the cabin vibrating as they soared above the coastline. She wrapped her arms around her belly, as if to shield it from the cold tension inside that cabin. Her eyes drifted to Alexander, searching for even the slightest flicker of recognition or care. But his face remained unreadable, carved from the same stone as the estate they were about to enter. The silence between them screamed louder than any argument. Her mind flicked through scenarios, questions swirling. Would Vivian blame her for the marriage's downfall? Would she discover shocking secrets within the Caldwell empire that Alexander had been trying to protect? By the time they touched down, Jenna had convinced herself that she was walking straight into a lion's den. Vivian Caldwell greeted them at the doorstep of her imposing estate, a gray stone manor perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. She wore a meticulously tailored pantsuit, her silver hair styled in a sleek chignon, her lips pressed into a thin line as she eyed Jenna's pregnant belly before turning to Alexander. "This is a family matter," Vivian said in a crisp tone. "Let's get inside." Jenna's gaze darted to Alexander, who avoided her eyes. She swallowed hard and followed them into a grand sitting room, where various Caldwell uncles, aunts, and cousins were gathered. The walls displayed oil paintings of ancestors going back generations, each subject exuding the same sense of stern authority. A team of lawyers waited behind a polished mahogany table. Vivian wasted no time addressing Jenna first. "I understand there have been disagreements in your household, my dear. But the Caldwell name does not bow to scandal. We must handle this quietly." Jenna's blood simmered at Vivian's condescension. "I appreciate your concern," she said, striving for composure. "But Alexander's behavior, his absence, his neglect, it's made it impossible for us to continue as if everything is fine." Vivian's eyes flashed. "Alexander is a busy man. As the eldest son and heir, he carries responsibilities. You could not imagine." Alexander stood to the side, silent. Jenna clenched her hands, resisting the urge to lash out. "I don't doubt the weight he bears. But being busy doesn't excuse betrayal or emotional abandonment. We're having a child, and he hasn't even tried to be present." One of the family's lawyers, a man with thick glasses named Vernon Locke, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Caldwell, if I may, we have settlement arrangements that could be made to ensure your comfort, as well as the child's, without the need for public legal proceedings. As you can imagine, a very public divorce would harm not only Alexander's reputation, but also the family's business interests." Jenna's jaw clenched. "So you want me to quietly accept hush money and remain married in name only? That's not going to happen." She could almost feel the tension radiating from Alexander, but he still said nothing. Vivian's expression remained a mask of calm. "We're not suggesting that," Vivian replied icily. "We're merely proposing that matters be handled discreetly. We're willing to grant you certain concessions." Jenna stared at them, heart pounding. "A child is not a concession. A marriage is not a bargaining chip. I have every right to a divorce, if I choose." Vivian interrupted. "This conversation is over. Alexander, take her to the East Wing. We'll reconvene in the morning once calmer heads prevail." It was not a request, it was a command. Jenna looked at Alexander, expecting him to stand up for her. Instead, he just nodded once. The rest of the Caldwell kin parted as Jenna followed Alexander down a long corridor, the portraits of stern-faced ancestors seeming to judge her every step. The East Wing of Vivian's estate was no less opulent than the rest of the manor. Lush carpets, antiques from Europe, and windows offering sweeping ocean views. But for Jenna, it felt like a prison. She collapsed into a velvet armchair, her emotions in turmoil. Alexander stood across the room, stiff and silent. At last, she couldn't bear his silence any longer. "Why did you drag me here? So your mother can strong-arm me into pretending everything's fine?" Alexander walked to the window, gazing out at the darkening sky. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "I tried to warn you." Jenna let out a bitter laugh. "Warn me? About what? That your family wants to keep your transgressions hidden to protect their precious empire?" He turned sharply, eyes burning. "Don't you see? I'm caught between you and them. My mother controls the board. She controls entire segments of our company. She's not a woman to be trifled with." Jenna rose, crossing her arms over her chest. "And what about your affair with Camille? Or is that part of the family plan too?" Alexander's expression darkened. "I'm not discussing Camille with you. That's over." Stunned, Jenna reeled. "It's over then? You admit there was something?" He swallowed, his gaze flitting around the room. For a moment, Jenna thought she saw regret in his eyes, but it vanished. "It happened, all right, but it was a distraction, one I'm not proud of." Hurt and rage whipped through her. She clenched her fists. "A distraction? From your pregnant wife?" His shoulders sagged. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I never wanted to hurt you. But my life has always been orchestrated by the family. Our marriage was the only thing I thought I had for myself. But even that became tangled in family obligations." Jenna felt tears at the edge of her eyes. "So you ignored me for weeks, letting me worry whether you even cared? Do you have any idea how isolating that felt?" Alexander squeezed his eyes shut. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words barely audible. A surge of conflicting emotions welled up in Jenna: love, betrayal, pity, anger. She took a shaky breath. "I hired a divorce attorney." He looked at her, eyes wide. "You did?" She nodded, tears escaping. "Yes, because I won't live like this. I won't raise a child in this cold, superficial world." He said nothing for a moment, then sank onto a nearby chair, head in his hands. The weight of his secrets and his mother's demands seemed to crush him. Jenna watched him, remembering the gentler man she had first fallen in love with. As tension cloaked the room, the door swung open suddenly. It was one of Vivian's staff, a woman named Eliza. "Mrs. Caldwell demands an immediate audience in her office," Eliza said, averting her gaze from the emotionally charged scene. Jenna steeled herself, exchanging a glance with Alexander. He nodded numbly. Without a word, they followed Eliza through the labyrinthine corridors, bracing for whatever judgment Vivian had in store for them. Vivian's office was a fortress of power. Dark paneled walls, shelves lined with books on corporate law and economics, and an imposing mahogany desk. She stood behind it, hands clasped, eyes like steel daggers. "I've consulted with the family's legal advisors," Vivian began, her voice echoing in the stillness. "We are prepared to offer a generous settlement to Jenna, with full child support, under the condition that she drop any public accusations and sign a strict non-disclosure agreement." Jenna's blood boiled. "So I'm supposed to accept hush money in exchange for my freedom? What about the emotional abuse? The affair? The humiliations?" Vivian's cold gaze swept over her. "Alexander has made mistakes, but so have many powerful men. Our interest is preserving the Caldwell name and ensuring your child is raised with proper support." Alexander stood to one side, his face drained of color. Jenna's voice trembled as she replied, "You can't just buy me off. I won't be silenced." Vivian offered a thin smile. In that case, we'll proceed with more aggressive measures. The Caldwell legal team is relentless. If you try to go public or drag this through the courts, we'll ensure your name and reputation suffer. We'll bury you in litigation. Jenna's hands shook, her mind reeling. She could see the trap Vivian was laying. Accepting the money would make it appear she was complicit in covering up Alexander's wrongdoing. But rejecting it meant wading into a legal quagmire, an unfair fight against an empire. She glanced at Alexander, silently pleading for him to intervene. Finally, he found his voice. "Mother, please, don't threaten her. She's carrying my child." Vivian's gaze flicked to him, as icy as ever. "I do this for your benefit, Alexander. Emotional entanglements cloud judgment. The family's fortune and reputation are at stake." A tense silence settled. Jenna could hardly breathe. Then, with shaky resolve, she broke the stillness. "I won't sign anything until I've spoken with my own lawyer." Vivian eyed her like a predator sizing up prey. "Very well, but be aware that time is of the essence. Refuse our terms and we'll have no choice but to move forward with a defense strategy that could annihilate your standing." Her words rang in Jenna's ears like the final toll of a bell. She turned on her heel and left, Alexander trailing behind her. She heard the door click shut, sealing Vivian away. The hallway seemed to press in on them, suffocating in its silence. When they reached the East Wing suite, Jenna whirled around to face Alexander. "What are you going to do?" she demanded, tears brimming. "Are you going to stand by while your mother threatens our child's security?" He swallowed hard, looking older and warier than she'd ever seen him. "Jenna, please," he whispered. "Let me handle this." She shook her head. "You've had every opportunity to handle this, and you've done nothing but keep me in the dark." He glanced away, guilt evident in his downcast eyes. "I don't know how to fight her. She holds the controlling shares. She shaped every aspect of my life, my education, my career, even our marriage." Jenna's heart twisted. She wanted to hate him, but she also saw the terrified boy behind the powerful man. Still, she couldn't allow his fear to dictate her future. She placed a hand protectively over her belly. "If you can't stand up to her, for me, for us, then I'll do it alone." His shoulders slumped in despair, but he said nothing further. As Jenna sat on the edge of the bed that night, she opened her phone and hesitated over social media apps. The public didn't know the truth yet, but they would. And when they did, would they believe her? Or would they see her as a gold digger, a pregnant woman trying to dismantle a legacy? The thought made her nauseous. She turned the phone face down, resisting the urge to read headlines that didn't even exist yet. Her fear wasn't just of losing, it was of being misunderstood, branded cruelly in ways she couldn't control. That night, Jenna lay awake, staring at the moonlit ocean. Her decision was forming, solidifying with each breath. She knew she would file for divorce. The question was whether she could escape the Caldwell fortress unscathed. The next morning, Jenna awoke to find the door to the East Wing locked from the outside. A jolt of panic shot through her. She rattled the handle, heart pounding, until a maid arrived carrying a breakfast tray. The young maid, eyes downcast, avoided Jenna's questioning gaze as she slipped the tray in. "So this is how Vivian deals with adversity," Jenna said coldly. "By imprisoning me?" The maid remained silent, but as she turned to leave, she whispered, "They want to keep you here until an agreement is made." She quickly fled, leaving Jenna stunned and furious. Hours later, Alexander appeared. "Mother insists you sign the NDA before leaving," Alexander said, shame in his eyes. "She's worried you'll go public." Jenna squared her shoulders. "I'm not signing anything without my lawyer present." He gestured helplessly. "She won't allow your lawyer onto the estate, and she controls all flights off the peninsula. The Caldwell jet is grounded until you comply." Fury erupted in Jenna. She realized Vivian was staging a mini coup, using her power to coerce Jenna into a favorable deal. But she also knew Carmel had public ferries. The Caldwells might try to intimidate her, but they couldn't shut down an entire county's transportation. She inhaled slowly, formulating a plan. "I'm leaving," she declared, "even if I have to walk to the ferry." Alexander's eyes widened. "She won't let you. She's posted private security." Jenna's voice rose. "I don't care. This is kidnapping, Alexander. I refuse to be held hostage by your mother." Before he could argue, she brushed past him, striding down the corridor. Indeed, two security men blocked the main entrance. Jenna's heart hammered, but she refused to falter. She stared them down. "Are you prepared to assault a pregnant woman if I try to leave?" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "Is that what the Caldwell legacy stands for?" The guards exchanged uneasy looks. They were likely instructed not to resort to violence, at least not in a way that would stain the family's image. Sensing their hesitation, Jenna pushed forward. They parted, perhaps more afraid of a lawsuit or negative publicity than of Vivian's wrath. Once outside, Jenna moved quickly across the estate's manicured lawns, ignoring the startled glances of staff and relatives milling about. Each step felt like a rebellion, a reclaiming of control she had been stripped of for far too long. The cool breeze bit at her skin, but it was the fire in her chest that kept her moving. She wasn't just walking away from a mansion, she was walking out of captivity. She was nearly at the gates when a black SUV pulled up, blocking her path. The driver's window rolled down, revealing Vivian Caldwell herself, austere and commanding. "Don't be foolish," Vivian snapped. "Where will you go? Are you going to call a taxi? There are none near this part of the coast. And even if you make it to the ferry, how will you manage? Without your luggage, your money, your phone, everything. I can cut you off from—" Jenna glared at her, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I'm not your prisoner. You can't lock me away. I will find a way to the ferry. I'll beg a ride from a stranger if I have to. I'm done living under your tyranny." Vivian's nostrils flared in anger, but she hesitated. The last thing she wanted was a public scene. Finally, she spit out her words. "Get in the car. I'll drop you at the ferry. But don't expect me to save you from what happens next." Jenna stared at her, weighing her options. Walking alone down the roads of Carmel Highlands, heavily pregnant, might be dangerous. After a tense moment, she climbed into the SUV. The ride was filled with suffocating silence, Vivian's anger palpable. When they reached the ferry dock, Vivian brought the SUV to a halt. "This is your last chance," she said coldly, thrusting an envelope at Jenna, "the NDA and a preliminary settlement. Sign it or leave with nothing." Jenna took the envelope, opened the door, and stepped out without a word. She slammed the car door, hearing the SUV's tires squeal as Vivian sped away. Despite her pounding heart, she felt a rush of liberation. Clutching the envelope, she boarded the ferry, determined to reclaim her life. The ferry ride felt surreal. Salt air stung Jenna's cheeks, the boat's engine rattling as she left the aristocratic fortress behind. She gazed at the horizon, praying the life growing inside her would someday know a happier reality than the one she had just escaped. Once on the mainland, she used a payphone. Her own phone service, courtesy of the Caldwell family plan, had mysteriously been cut off. She called Naomi, who agreed to pick her up and drive her to San Francisco. During the ride, Naomi was both appalled and fascinated by the dramatic showdown with Vivian Caldwell. "I knew the family was powerful," Naomi said, weaving through traffic. "But I never imagined they'd go to these lengths. They're prepared to do anything to keep their image intact." "They are," Jenna replied, leaning her head against the window. "I need to move fast before they try something else." Naomi took her to a small boutique hotel owned by a friend who owed her a favor. It was modest compared to the opulence Jenna was used to, but she felt an immense sense of relief stepping into a room that was hers alone, where she could lock the door without fear of intrusion. First, Jenna contacted Olivia Kwan, her divorce attorney, recounting every detail of her forced stay at the Carmel estate and Vivian's intimidation. Olivia's usually calm tone sharpened with anger. "This is a violation of your personal rights," she said, "and it sounds like an attempt to coerce you into signing legal documents. We need to file for an emergency restraining order. If they try to approach you again—" Exhausted, Jenna agreed. She hung up and sank onto the bed, letting the tension ease from her shoulders. Naomi placed a gentle hand on her arm. "You're brave," her friend said softly. "Not many people stand up to the Caldwell family." Jenna managed a small smile. "I don't feel brave. I feel scared and alone, but I won't let them bully me." Naomi squeezed her hand. "You're not alone. You have me, and you have this baby, and we're going to fight." The next morning, word spread that Jenna Caldwell had left the family estate. Social media buzzed with unconfirmed rumors. A few paparazzi shots even surfaced of her on the ferry dock. Looking distraught, Vivian Caldwell, unaccustomed to losing control, released a terse statement to the press, claiming Jenna was undergoing medical rest due to pregnancy complications and that the family valued her health above all. Incensed by the blatant lie, Jenna composed her own statement through her lawyer, refuting Vivian's claims and stating she was safely in San Francisco, preparing to take legal action. The tabloids latched onto the drama, splashing headlines like "Caldwell heir in marital crisis, pregnant wife flees family compound." Amid the public frenzy, Alexander reached out to Jenna for the first time since her escape. She was in Naomi's car heading to an obstetric appointment when her temporary phone buzzed. Her heart hammered. Should she answer? She took a deep breath. "Hello?" A pause. "Jenna, it's me." She forced calm into her voice. "What do you want, Alexander?" He sounded strained. I want to talk. Face to face. Without lawyers. Just us." She hesitated, recalling the anguish she'd felt in Carmel, but she also remembered the flickers of regret and sorrow she'd seen in his eyes. "Fine. We can meet somewhere public." They arranged to meet at a discreet cafe in Midtown. Jenna insisted on having Naomi wait nearby, just in case. When she arrived, Alexander was already seated, looking tired and lost in thought. The bustling noise of the lunch crowd cocooned them in anonymity. "You look well," he said softly, eyes flicking to her belly. "How is the baby?" "Healthy as far as I can tell," Jenna replied, bracing herself. "What do you need to say, Alexander?" He looked around, as if fearing hidden microphones. "Mother thinks you'll drag the family name through the mud. She's pressuring me to take legal action first, to accuse you of defamation, mental instability, anything to undermine you." Her stomach clenched. "That's despicable." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I told her I wouldn't. I can't. You're my wife." "Not for much longer," she cut in, voice trembling. "I've decided to move forward with the divorce." Alexander winced, but nodded. "I understand. I want to make sure our child is provided for, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of their life." Jenna felt tears brim, her defenses faltering. "That depends on you, Alexander. It depends on whether you'll stop lying, stop hiding behind your mother, and actually show up." He reached across the table, tentatively placing his hand over hers. "I know I failed you," Alexander said, "but I'm trying to break free from mother's control. I never wanted it to come to this." She withdrew her hand. "Words won't fix it. Actions might. If you truly want to be involved, then cooperate with the divorce. Don't let your family's attorneys tear me apart." Alexander's eyes glistened. "I'll do what I can." For a moment, they shared a fragile silence, the gravity of their shattered marriage pressing down on them. It was the kind of silence that held years of promises broken, laughter forgotten, and love left to wither in dark corners of an elegant house. Jenna's chest tightened under the weight of everything unsaid, every moment she had begged silently for him to see her, to fight for her. Then Jenna stood, feeling a surge of resilience. "I need to go," she said. "I have a doctor's appointment." He nodded, gaze dropping to the table. As Jenna left, she felt a complex mixture of relief and sorrow. The man she had once loved was still in there, but he was shackled by a legacy he seemed powerless to escape. She only hoped that for the sake of their child, he would find the courage to stand up to Vivian. With Alexander's promise not to wage war, Jenna proceeded with her divorce filing. Olivia Kwan's firm finalized the documents, citing irreconcilable differences and detailing the emotional neglect and financial misconduct in the marriage. They meticulously outlined evidence of Alexander's affair with Camille Duval, as well as potential financial improprieties within the Caldwell empire. On a cool Tuesday morning, a courier delivered the divorce papers to Caldwell Group headquarters in San Francisco, ensuring that not just Alexander, but also the entire board would be made aware. The tabloids had a field day, broadcasting the headline, "Pregnant Caldwell wife officially files for divorce. Billion-dollar battle looms." Frenzied reporters camped outside the Marin estate and the corporate offices. Jenna, however, remained in her small hotel room, her stress, exacerbated by paparazzi, mounted. Journalists occasionally cornered her for a statement. Naomi did her best to run interference, and Olivia continued to reassure her. Amid the media circus, Jenna received an unexpected call. Dr. James Bartlett, her OB/GYN, wanted to see her immediately. Concerned, Jenna rushed to the appointment, Naomi by her side. The doctor explained that Jenna's blood pressure was elevated, a risky condition during pregnancy. You need to limit your stress, Dr. Bartlett advised gently, noting the tension that seemed to radiate from every fiber of Jenna's being. Keep hydrated and try to rest. You're putting both yourself and the baby at risk. Jenna nodded, but her eyes welled. She hadn't told anyone, not even Naomi, that she had fainted 2 nights before, alone in the hotel bathroom. Just a dizzy spell, she told herself. But now she wasn't so sure. She gripped the arms of the exam chair to steady herself, not just physically, but emotionally. After the appointment, Jenna broke down in Naomi's car. "How can I reduce stress when Alexander's family might throw everything they have at me?" she sobbed. Naomi handed her tissues, her voice gentle. "You're doing the right thing, Jenna. Just take it one day at a time. The media frenzy will die down eventually. And legally, Olivia's team can handle the brunt of it." Jenna nodded, wiping her tears. She was determined not to let the Caldwells break her. For the sake of her unborn child, she would find the strength to stand firm. Days turned into weeks, and the legal battle heated up. Alexander's attorneys attempted to refute claims of the affair, spinning narratives that Camille Duval was merely a hired designer for the penthouse. Vivian Caldwell, however, largely stayed silent in public, focusing her efforts on manipulating board decisions that could corner Alexander and pressure him into forcing a quick resolution. Jenna attended multiple court conferences, leaning on Olivia's expertise. During a particularly tense negotiation, Alexander appeared in person, flanked by his lawyers. Jenna braced herself for a cold showdown, but he surprised her by taking her aside during a recess. "I've been trying to liquidate some of my personal assets," he said, voice low and urgent. "I'm going to put that money into a separate account for you and the baby, away from mother's control. It's not hush money, it's support, my way of apologizing." Jenna studied him. She could sense sincerity in his words. "I appreciate that," she said quietly. "But it won't change the fact that I need this divorce. We can't keep living in shadows and lies." He nodded, exhaling a shaky breath. "I know. He trailed off, eyes flicking to her belly. "Please keep me updated on the baby." Her throat tightened. She recalled the man she used to laugh with, the man who once seemed so genuine and full of life. Now they stood on opposite sides of a yawning chasm. She fought a sudden urge to hug him, to share in the excitement of becoming parents, but the wounds were too fresh. As proceedings continued, Vivian Caldwell began employing more underhanded tactics, even threatening to question Jenna's mental fitness as a mother in a rumored custody fight. Enraged, Jenna's attorney countered with evidence of emotional abuse and controlling behavior from the Caldwell family. The battle lines were drawn so firmly that it felt like no resolution was in sight. One night, as Jenna lay awake in her hotel room, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was trembling with urgency. "Jenna, it's Rafael Costa, Naomi's private investigator contact. I've uncovered something that changes everything." Heart pounding, Jenna invited him to speak freely. Rafael explained that, while investigating the Caldwell Group's financials, he stumbled upon evidence that the family might be involved in illegal offshore tax evasion, and that Alexander himself had tried to put a stop to it. Vivian had apparently orchestrated these schemes for years, funneling portions of the company's profits into secret accounts. Alexander, in an attempt to separate himself from the illicit activity, had started secretly liquidating his own assets to protect himself and, in a sense, Jenna from the blowback. Stunned, Jenna sank onto the edge of the bed. "That means he wasn't ignoring me all those weeks. He was dealing with this?" Rafael hesitated. "He did have an affair, from what we can tell, but the deeper secrecy seems tied to the family's potential crimes. He might have been trying to shield you or to orchestrate a defense plan. If the authorities catch wind of this, it's massive." By the time Jenna hung up, her mind reeled. Could Alexander have been more complicated than she'd imagined, both betraying her emotionally and trying to protect her financially? The confusion weighed heavily on her. She thought back to all the cryptic phone calls, his rushed disappearances. Perhaps they weren't all about Camille. Maybe they were about extricating himself from Vivian's schemes. Faced with this new twist, Jenna reached out to Olivia Kwan. They strategized that if Alexander was indeed seeking to distance himself from criminal activity, Jenna might use the information as leverage for a swift divorce settlement, ensuring she and her child were completely free of the Caldwell Empire's unscrupulous dealings. But that also meant treading carefully. Accusing a powerful family of financial crimes could put a target on her back. Armed with Raphael's findings, Jenna and Olivia arranged a confidential meeting with Alexander at the law firm's office. Alexander arrived alone, looking visibly stressed. Olivia opened the discussion. "We have reason to believe there are illegal offshore accounts tied to the Caldwell Group. Jenna could expose this in court, which would result in an investigation by federal authorities." Alexander's face paled, his voice hushed. "How did you? Never mind." "Yes, my mother has been running that operation for years. I didn't discover it until after we married. She orchestrated everything so carefully that it took me a long time to gather proof." Jenna asked softly, "Why didn't you tell me?" He rubbed his temples, looking defeated. "I was scared that if you knew, you'd be in danger, or that you'd hate me for being part of it, and I was trying to stop it from the inside. But I got tangled up in deception. I needed a release, and that's when Camille happened. It was stupid, reckless." A heavy silence followed. At last, Jenna spoke, her voice tremulous. "Alexander, I can't undo your betrayal, but for the sake of our child, I want a divorce that frees us both from your mother's manipulations and her crimes. Are you willing to come clean? Cooperate with the authorities if it comes to that?" He stared at the floor, tears glinting in his eyes. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll do it. I'll sign whatever I need to sign to ensure you and our child are safe. I'll testify against my mother, if necessary. Just promise me I won't lose any chance to be part of my child's life." Jenna felt tears of her own threatening. She reached for a tissue, glancing at Olivia, who offered a small, supportive nod. "You'll have that chance," Jenna said, her voice shaking. "But you need to be honest from now on." Alexander nodded, relief mingled with sorrow in his expression. "I will." Within days, the final divorce papers were drawn. Both sides agreed to a substantial financial settlement for Jenna, as well as joint custody arrangements that would allow Alexander visitation rights, provided he kept to a strict code of conduct. Most importantly, the settlement included a clause that released Jenna from any liability tied to the Caldwell Group's offshore accounts, effectively shielding her and her child from potential legal fallout. Vivian was livid, but she found herself cornered. If she tried to retaliate, Alexander could reveal her financial schemes. If she cut him out of the family trust, she risked losing control of the board, since the scandal would rock the company. In the end, she grudgingly signed the documents, though she made her contempt for Jenna painfully clear through icy glares and biting remarks in private emails. On a sunny afternoon in San Francisco, Jenna and Alexander met at the courthouse to finalize the divorce. Jenna wore a simple beige dress, her belly now quite pronounced. Alexander, in a subdued navy suit, approached her with a rueful smile. Reporters buzzed outside, cameras clicking relentlessly. When the judge asked if both parties were certain they wanted to proceed, they each answered resolutely. Yes. The gavel struck. And just like that, the marriage was legally over. Alexander lingered, seeming to want to say more. Jenna gave him a gentle parting look, her anger and grief interwoven with a faint thread of sympathy. Then she turned and walked away, the hush of finality settling over her heart. 2 months later, Jenna sat in her modest but cozy new apartment in San Francisco, sipping herbal tea and gazing out the window. The city bustled below, a cacophony of horns and sirens. She rested a hand on her now heavily pregnant belly, feeling the baby kick. Every day, she reminded herself of how far she had come, from being a neglected wife in a lonely estate to a woman forging her own path, free of illusions. She had reconnected with her parents, who were thrilled to visit and help with the baby. Naomi remained her rock, visiting often, bringing groceries and cheerful banter to lighten Jenna's mood. Legally, the settlement from Alexander provided a substantial financial cushion, enough for Jenna to ensure a stable future for her child, without depending on the Caldwell empire. Alexander, for his part, kept to the terms of their joint custody agreement. He called weekly to check on the baby, carefully maintaining a respectful distance. He also quietly cooperated with authorities investigating Vivian's financial activities, though it would be months or even years before any real legal consequences for the Caldwell matriarch emerged. In her quieter moments, Jenna reflected on the whirlwind she had endured. Love, betrayal, power, vulnerability, all had collided in a cataclysm that nearly broke her, but she realized something crucial. Every challenge, every heartbreak had forged in her a resilience she never knew she possessed. She had learned to stand up for herself, to value her worth, and to protect her child at all costs. Yet not every night was restful. Sometimes she still woke up in the early hours, heart-pounding from dreams that took her back to that locked door in Carmel, or the cold silence of Alexander's mansion. She would lie still, hand on her belly, whispering to her unborn child, "We're safe now, I promise." And slowly her breath would steady. As she felt another swift kick, a small smile tugged at her lips. A new chapter awaited, a chapter in which she would be a mother, guiding her child with the warmth and compassion she herself once feared she had lost. No matter what the future held, she would face it on her own terms, free from the shadows that had once imprisoned her in that coastal estate. Dear friend, sometimes life doesn't give us the closure we imagine. It simply hands us the quiet strength to move forward. Jenna's story reminds us of a stoic truth. We may not control the storms that break us, but we do control how we rebuild. She didn't choose betrayal, isolation, or the burden of silence, but she did choose resilience. And in choosing to walk away from a gilded prison, she stepped toward her own peace, not in defiance, but in quiet courage. Like Jenna, many of us will face chapters we never asked for. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, what stands in the way becomes the way. Let her journey be a quiet nudge in your own heart, proof that healing is not loud, but it is real, and it begins when we refuse to let pain define us. You are stronger than the silence that tried to break you. If Jenna's story moved you, we'd be honored if you'd like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us keep telling these powerful, soul-stirring stories that stay with you long after the credits roll.